the first step will be to set up our database so that it can have the connection with MySQL database. So from here, I'm going to change it from SQLite to MySQL, and then I'm going to say the name of my database will be Library Management DB. Okay, Library Management DB, and then the name of our application will be Library Management API. Okay, so after that, now our application will be good. Now let's try to migrate this so that we can create that new database in our database. So here, run PHP. Let me zoom a little bit. So here we are going to run PHP @ migrate, and this will ask you if you want to create that new database. So I'll say yes, and it has just created the database and run the default migrations. So now if you go back here in your database and refresh, now you should see a new database here called the Library Management DB, and from here you can see there is a couple of tables which are default tables that have been created, and you can see the rows are empty except for the one for migrations that it tracks the migration that you have done. Okay, so after that, now let's start to set up a database. Means we are going to start creating the models, migrations, and factories, because we need to generate some of the data for dummy and testing. Okay, so we are going to create all of these three. So from the command line here, I'm going to show you how to create all of these three at once. So we are going to say PHP @ make model, and then we are going to start by creating the author model. As I've mentioned, we are going to have author, so we want to have migrations and also the factories. So by adding this flag of M and F means that we need to add migrations and the factories. So the name of the model will be author, then we need also to have the migration and the factory. Okay, so now you see three of the files will be created. For the model, it will be author.php. Then you are going to have the factory, which is the author factory, and you are going to have the table, which is a migration table for authors table. Okay, so here on your database, you're going to see there is a new migration file which is called the authors. Here you can see it. On factories, we are going to have a new class which is called the author factory, and you can see it is empty here, so we are going to update that in a minute. But also here on models, you are going to see there is a new class which is called the author. Okay, so from there, now let's go back on here and let's generate for other models. So we are going to add another one for book, which will store all the books, and then let's add another one for members. Okay, and the last one will be for borrowing. Okay, yeah, so all of them are now done. So the same way you are going to see the classes, so you can see the borrowing, book, members, and there is user, which is the default migration, but also we are going to see the factories as I have mentioned, also the migrations for books, author, members, and also the borrowings. So now, without wasting time, now let's start to update the migrations, and then we are going to run it, and then we are going to start updating our models. So let's start with the author migration. So from author migration, we are going to have the following fields. So the first one will be the name of the author. So this should be a string. So here we are going to say this should have the name of the author. Also, we are going to have the bio of the author. So I'm just simplifying the application so that it will not be that much complicated, but later on you can create other more fields that you wish. Okay, but also we are going to want to know the nationality of the author. So here we're going to say nationality. Okay, so this should be also nullable, means that it is not a must field. And that's all on our author. So you can add more, you can add like a date of birth, you can add more and more fields as you wish, but for the sake of our project I'll just stick with only that. Now let's go to the book. Now on books we are going to have the following fields. So the first one will be the title of the book, so it will be title, and down here we are going to have the book. So this should be a string ISBN. I believe that is sound familiar to you. So this will be a unique field which will be used to identify each of the book. So I believe this is concerning with the unique number about every publishable books. I believe that's making sense to you. So we are going to use that because this will be a unique value. So we are going to use that whenever we want to differentiate the books. But also we are going to have the book description. So we are going to say text, then description, which will be the book description. Then this can be nullable. Then we are going to know the author of the book. So this will be a foreign key, which will be author ID, which will be constrained to authors. Then on delete, then we can just say cascade on delete. Okay, so when the author will be deleted, then their books will be also deleted, but you can change that. Let's say you can make it to be nullable so that when the author will be removed, then the book can remain. So we can just make this field to be nullable, but for me I'll just make it to be deleted also. So after that we are going to have another field which will be let's say you may want to store something like January. So here we're going to say January, and it will be nullable, so it's not a must field. Also we are going to need to store the date of publishment. So we are going to say published at. Okay, but also this can be nullable. Also we are going to store the number of copies. So let me say number, or we can just say total copies. So how many number of that book do you have in your library? So we can just call it copies. So this by default we can put only 1, and also we are going to have another field which will help you to track how many number of books are available. So let's say you have a book and the total number of that books, let's say, is 5, and we are going to have another field that will help you to track how many number of copies do you have available. Let's say there are 5, but 3 are borrowed, so you have only availability of 2 copies. So that will be the essence of that field, which will be an integer, and it will be called the available copies. Okay, and then this can be defaulted to 1. Okay, and then we are going to have another field. Let's say you want to store the cover pages of your books. So here we are going to say, let's say, cover image, which will store the path of the image in your system. So this can be nullable. And then we are going to need to have the status. So we are going to have an enum field here, which will have the status of the field of the book actually. So we want to know if the book is active or inactive. Means that if that book is not available, so that's the essence of that field. Then by default, we are going to make all the books to be available or active. Okay, and then after that, I want to add the indexes, and these indexes will be helpful for performance optimization. So for performance, we are going to add the indexes. So if I get time, I'll explain to you about how indexes help to improve performance of your Laravel applications. So for now, let me just add here the following author ID, and then another one will be for ISBN. So means that when these books will be fetched, let's say, so here we put only the fields that will be promptly, most of the time will be used to be queried. So that's why we add them as indexes. So it means that instead of searching through all the table, it will know where to look for that specific title or ISBN or author. So that is the essence of adding the indexes. So if I get time, I'll create a video to explain indexes in details. So for now, that's all about the books. Now let's go to the members. So our members table right here. So the first field will be the name of the member. So string name. Then we are going to have the email of the member. So string email. Then we need to make sure that it is unique. Also, we are going to store the address of the member. But there is one field that I forgot to add here. So if this library it is on street, let's say you are borrowing by charging a certain price, so you can add the field of price here. So I'll just put it here, but I'll not use it in my video, but it will be helpful for you if you are using it for generating a library API that will make people to pay in order to borrow a certain book. So that will be helpful. But for now, I'll just put here price in my decimal field, and here you can define the total number of digits that you can have. So let's say 8, and also the decimal places we can put 2. Okay, so it will be like that, and I'll put here to be nullable, so that if we don't put anything, it can be nullable. Okay, and then after that, on members, let's continue here. This can be nullable, and then we can have the membership date, so the date when that member joined the library. So here we're going to add the date field, which will be membership date, and then we are going to have the status of that member. So let's have another enum here, and we are going to say status, and then we are going to say the member can be active or inactive. So you can add more statuses as you wish, but for now I'll just put that, and the default one can be active. Okay. Yeah, so for now that's cool. Now let's finish up with the borrowing. So on borrowing, we are going to have the following fields. So the first one will be the foreign key to identify which book was borrowed. So here we are going to have book ID, which this will be constrained to books table. Then we are going to make sure that on cascade, then it will be deleted. And after that, we are going to want to know which member have or has that book. So here we are going to have the foreign key of member ID, which is constrained to members. Okay, so cascade on delete, and then we are going to have the date of borrowing, so date, and here we are going to say borrowed and after that we need to have the due date, means the date that they should return the book. So we can just call it due date. Okay, and also you need to track when did they return the book. So let's say returned date. So this will help you to track. So for example, they borrowed today and you expect them to return it after 2 days, but let's say they return it after 5 days. So this will help you to understand your members. So we can make this to be nullable, and then after that we want to have a status that will help you to track if the book so status, so want to know if the book is borrowed, returned, and lastly if it is overdue. Okay, and then by default it will be borrowed. So when you create your data, that book will be seen to be borrowed. Okay, similarly here I'm going to add indexes for performance. So I'm going to add the following. So index for member ID, then for status, and then the index for due date. Okay, so you can add the indexes for the fields that you believe will be most of the time will be queried from the table. So that's how easy you can just do that. So after that, now we have all the tables set up successfully. So now let me run migration. So PHP artisan migrate. So this will create all the tables that we have. So the authors, books, members, and borrowings. So now if we go to the database here and refresh, now you should see we have authors, books, borrowings, we have members here. So that's how easy you can just do that. Okay, now after that we need to update our models so that we can have all the fields that we've updated in our fillable attribute for mass assignment, and also to define the relationships that we will need. Okay, so let's start up with our author model, and from that let's start by adding the following things. So on fillable we are going to add the following. So I'll just paste some of the fields that I've already prepared so that we cannot spend more time here. So here I have protected fillable attribute, and then in this array will return all the fields that we have on our migration. So this will help on mass assignment. And then here you have to make sure that you use this trait, so that when you will create the factories or when we will update our factories, then they can be usable on our application. Okay, now after that we need to define the relationship between the author and the book. So public function books, because one author can have more than one book. So here we are going to return this has many books, or as many book. Okay, so that is the relationship between the author and the books. Okay, now after that, now let's go to the book, and in here I'll paste the protected fillable fields. So here we have the title, ISBN, description, author ID, genre, published date, total of copies, available copies, price, the cover image, and the status. So if there is any field that is left, you can just add it here. Okay, now after that we want to add the relationship between the author and the book. So means on here only one book can be written by only one author, and it may happen it can be one-to-one or one-to-many, so it will change as you use it. So but for that we want to know the author of that specific book, and after that we want to know the borrowings that are related to the book. So here is the relationship between the borrowings that you have that will be related to this particular book. Okay, now after that we want to know, so this will be just a helper methods that will help you to understand, or to be available so that you can use them anytime that you want. So this will be extra helper methods. So the first one will be is available. So this will help you to get and to know if that book have any of the available copies. So this is how you can just do it, and it will return a boolean value. So when there is any of the book, means when the book copies in available fields it's greater than 0, then this will return true. But if that's not true, then this will return false. So this will be just a helper method that will help us to get the status. Okay. Also, we want to decrease and increase the available number of copies when the user borrow the book, and we want to increase the availability when the user return the book. So this is the essence of having these two helper methods. So the first one will be called when you borrow a book, and the number of books will be reduced on the available copies, and when you return, then you will do the vice versa, which means we are going to increment. Now let's go to the borrowing, which is our model here, and from here I'll paste the following relationship and the helper methods. So from here, let me import the following, and let me import the carbon. Okay, so from here we have the protected fillable attribute, which will define the book ID member, which are the fields that we have on our table. Here also I have the cast, means that I want to make sure that the borrowed date, return due date, and the return date to make them to be date. So this will help you when you are either creating the borrowing or updating. So this will help you to make sure that those will be in the same format that you want. Okay, and here we have the relationship between the borrowing and the book, and also we have the relationship between the member and the borrowing. So it means that we want to know which member has booked a certain book. Okay, and here we have the helper method, which is called is overdue, which will help us to identify if the book is overdue, means that the due date is below today, so means that that book will be overdue. So means on our borrowing we will make it to be overdue. Okay, and then after that, now let's update the members. So on members, I'll paste the following. So on members here, let me import the following, and here we have the fields, and down here I have the cast for membership date to make sure that it is date and it is on the same format as we want. And then here we are going to see how the borrowings are related to the member, so that the member can have more than one borrowings. So that's how easy you can just do that. And then for the helper method, here we have the active borrowings. So this active borrowings will return the borrowings which their status is borrowed. Okay, so we are going to need to know the active borrowings that the member can have. Okay, so that's how easy you can just do that. And after that, now we have done on database setup, and now the next step